Architecture doesn't just determine how systems are built, it determines how people are allowed to work. Long before a policy limits autonomy, architecture already has. We usually describe architecture in technical terms: services, databases, platforms, APIs. But architecture is also a behavioral system. It defines who needs to talk to who needs approval from who can make changes independently, and where coordination is unavoidable. These are not just technical properties. They are behavioral constraints built into the system's structure. Every architectural decision creates a constraint. A shared database creates shared change risk. A centralized platform creates centralized coordination. A common deployment pipeline creates synchronized release timing. These structures don't just affect performance or scalability. They shape how teams plan, communicate, and deliver. Over time, architecture becomes the invisible structure that governs behavior. Organizations often try to shape behavior through rules, processes, or culture, but architecture is usually more powerful than all three. You can tell teams to move faster, but if every change requires cross-team coordination, architecture wins. You can promote autonomy, but if key capabilities are centralized, architecture defines the real boundaries. Architecture operates at the structural level. At scale, the central architectural tension is between autonomy and coordination. Decisions about service boundaries, data ownership, platform centralization, integration models determine where teams can act independently and where coordination is required. Well-designed constraints localize decision-making. Poorly designed constraints push complexity into human coordination instead of system structure. Constraints exist for good reasons. They manage risk, they ensure consistency, they make scale possible. But as systems evolve, constraints that once reduced risk can begin to increase friction. Boundaries no longer match real responsibilities. Platforms become bottlenecks instead of enablers. Integration models slow down change instead of supporting it. Architecture begins shaping behavior in ways no one originally intended. The most powerful constraints are the ones people stop noticing. Teams adapt around them. Workarounds appear. Shadow systems emerge. Coordination overhead becomes just how things work. By the time behavior has adapted, the architecture feels natural, even when it no longer fits the system's needs. Mature architecture is not about removing constraints. It's about designing them deliberately. Good constraints reduce unnecessary coordination, clarify ownership, limit blast radius, enable safe, local change. Poor constraints centralize too much, create hidden dependencies, force synchronized change, turn structure into friction. The difference isn't technical sophistication, it's whether constraints are aligned with how the system needs to evolve. You can think of architecture as a system of permissions. It defines what can change without asking, what requires coordination, what is safe to evolve, and what is structurally risky. This permission model shapes behavior more than any formal process ever could. Architecture is not just a technical blueprint. It is a behavioral system that shapes how people collaborate, move, and make decisions. If we want adaptable systems, we must design constraints with the same care we design components. Because in the end, architecture doesn't just shape software, it shapes the people who build it. See you in the next episode.